roles in ASEAN energy cooperation. So ASEAN Center for Energy is basically have three roles. First is as a think tank to identify and surface the innovative solution. And then the second is the Energy Data and Knowledge Hub that provides a knowledge depository for ASEAN member states. And the third is we are becoming a catalyst to unify and strengthen ASEAN energy cooperation and integration. And under the three roles that we serve, we cover this five function, and we cover the activities of research, publication, training, capacity building, workshop, and more importantly, policy exchange, and give recommendation to all ASEAN member states in energy sector. And today we'll have the third webinar. So for your kind information, it's a 4 series of webinar. We already conducted the first webinar on the future ASEAN power investment and the era of for gas import in ASEAN. And we are now in the third webinar, which will discuss about the renewable energy incentives and what are the next steps for ASEAN. And for those who missed the first and the second webinar, you can re-listen it in our YouTube page. And the fourth upcoming webinar is on nuclear that will be conducted next week. And the target audiences for this webinar is for energy regulators, policymakers, academia, or everyone who are interested in energy sector. And this webinar will be last for 1 hour starting from now until approximately 3 p.m. And the expected outputs of this webinar is we want to disseminate the key findings of our newest publication on the 5th ASEAN Energy Outlook, which was launched in the 35th ASEAN Minister on Energy meeting last September in Manila, which hopes to provide the policymaker and stakeholders in ASEAN energy potentials and understanding the term of energy and the related challenges to it. And by this webinar, we also want to identify the pathways and deliver the recommendation of the AO5 findings to support the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, or as we call it, APAEC, which serves as the guidance for the ASEAN member state to coherent their energy cooperation. So the agenda today, after the introduction that I've mentioned, we'll start with the AO5 findings, which will be delivered by one of our speakers, and then we will have 2 more other topics. And before closing the webinar, we will have a discussion and a session on question and answers. So today we have 3 speakers. First is Ms. Melati Wulandari from ASEAN Centre for Energy, and she is a technical officer for ASEAN German Energy Program in ACE, where she works on the activities related to RE and energy efficiency. She also work in the area of RE policies enhancement and project financing in ASEAN, and she will be the one to discuss about the key findings of the renewable energy in the Outlook. And the second one, we'll have the speaker from Philippines. She is Ms. Mariza Cerezo. She is the Deputy Director for Renewable Energy Management Bureau in the Department of Energy, and she has an educational background as a geologist and also lawyer, where she started her career in energy research laboratory in the DOE. And she will share the achievement and the next steps for the Philippines in RE incentive development. And the last but not least, we will have Ms. Supawan Salim, which is a Renewable Energy Policy Specialist for USAID Clean Power Asia program, which encourage power sector investment in environmentally friendly and renewable energy sector. She has a educational background in project analysis, finance and investment from University of York, and she's now currently pursuing her PhD in economics in Thailand. And she will discuss the findings of the USAID report, particularly in designing renewable energy incentive and auctions for the ASEAN region. So without further ado, I will invite Ms. Melati to present her discussion. The time is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Shani, for the kind introduction. So good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Melati Wulandari. I am a technical officer of ASEAN German Energy Program in ASEAN Centre for Energy. And in this great occasion, I would like to discuss some of the key findings on renewable energy from our fifth ASEAN Energy Outlook. So first of all, as briefly informed by Mrs. Shani before, this is our latest publication, the fifth ASEAN Energy Outlook. It's launched on the 35th ASEAN Ministers on Energy meeting, or AMEM, last September. And it is launched by the Philippine Secretary of Energy himself, the Secretary Kasi, and our own Executive Director, Dr. Sanjayan Fulaltam. And here is the photo from that launching event you can see on the screen. And since the development approach of this outlook actually has been thoroughly explained by 8 speakers on the previous webinars, so I would just briefly discuss and emphasize on a few things, which is that this outlook was developed under a remarkably strong cooperation, coordination, interaction, and also integration between ACE and the IO5 working group from all 10 ASEAN member states. So therefore, all parameters and all the assumptions and also the key findings from these outlooks clearly reflect official AMS expectations on their future energy development. And those were also reported in consultation with our ASEAN's Regional Energy Policy and Planning Subsector Network, or REPPSSN. This is for their validation and verification, and their guidelines were also used for the alignment with our region's priorities and also goals under the APAIC roadmap. So I believe that what elevates this outlook and makes it unique compared to other existing outlook out there. And this scenario philosophy actually has also been thoroughly discussed in the previous webinars too. So I'm just going to briefly explain. We have 3 scenarios. First is the business as usual, the BAU. Here we consider no significant changes to past practices. However, it takes into consideration such as the latest national power development plans from each AMS. And the next 2 scenarios, the IMS target scenario, ATS, and ASEAN progressive scenario, the APS, are actually target-based scenario. And in ATS, we assume that the officially issued energy efficiency and renewable energy policies in all AMS were successfully implemented. Therefore, the all 10 AMS is set to reach each of their national target. And in APS, we assume that all AMS are collectively doing like stronger efforts, which then leads to this region meeting the APAIC targets on EE and RE. I will elaborate more about this target on the next slide. So first, in the ATS scenario, we have AMS targets on renewable energy. As we can see on the screen, our 10 ASEAN member states has various targets and definitions of targets, also different target period as you can see, such as, for example, for Indonesia and Myanmar, they decided to set their renewable energy targets in their TPES share, while Cambodia, on the other hand, Cambodia, Malaysia, and Philippines, Singapore, and Vietnam set their RE targets from the installed capacity. They're also different in their target periods. For example, like Cambodia, Malaysia, and Singapore set their target period by 2020 in the shorter term, while Indonesia, Myanmar, Vietnam, and Philippines set their period until the 2030 in the longer term. And here is the APEC target on RE. This is what we inject to our APS model. So the APEC has targets on energy efficiency and conservation, also target in renewable energy. So to be more specific, our target on RE is actually to increase. It requires to increase the component of renewable energy to 23% by 2025 in ASEAN energy mix. So this energy mix translated as our TPES. And the definition of renewable energy, it covers all sources, including large hydro and all sizes of hydro, but actually excludes the traditional biomass. So unlike the national IMS target, the APEC target not only share the same target period, which is until 2025, but we also share the same RE definition and the scope. So after running our models, we come with the results and projections as seen on the screen. As our base year in 2015, we already have 13.6% of RE in the TPES share. And if we run the BAU scenario, which gives no significant changes, we obtain like a lower increase of RE share in TPES, which is only 13.1%. While in the ATS scenario, where we assume that all the national targets are achieved, we obtain the 21.4% share of RE in all TPES. And furthermore, in our APS scenario, which has the stronger effort, we obtain the 31.8% of RE share in TPES, all in the projection period of 2040. And if we zoom in a little bit more in our installed capacity, in the renewable energy, we can see in the screen that hydro still dominates the biggest share of RE in ASEAN. However, throughout our scenario from BAU to APS, the hydro share increased, while the other renewables such as geothermal, solar, and biomass and wind increase their share throughout this scenario from BAU to APS. And when we zoom in again, related to our APEC RE target in 2025, we can see that in 2015, after obtaining 13.6% of RE in TPES, in BAU in 2025 we obtain a lower RE share, which is 12.6%, which holds a big gap in order to reach the APEC RE target in 23%. While in the ATS, the national target scenario, we received 17.5% of RE share in TPES in 2025, which still has a gap of 5.5% until our RE target in 2025. So increasing RE component will require stronger efforts by AMS than currently foreseen. and the national policies and targets needs to be leveled up. And here we can see the RE share distribution in 2025. Furthermore, if we look into more details into in micro perspective, we can divide the RE share in TPS into three sectors, as seen in the slide. Here's the power sector, biofuels and modern biomass. And the power sector holds the biggest share of RE in TPS for all scenarios, compared to other such as biomass, modern biomass and biofuels. Here we can see that in the BAU, the 6.6% out of 12.6% is held by power sector, and then in ATS and APS, it holds the power sector holds the share around 65 or 67%. So this makes the power sector the most significant contributor for the region to achieve its aspirational APEC target on RE. And after knowing that power is the most contributing sector in RE-TPS, we run the model again and break it down even further into countries to calculate roles from each AMS in order to reach the APEC RE target. So the model considers country-specific potentials for each technology and also contains figures on the long-term development of renewable technologies in ASEAN. As a result, we found out that this region needs to install a total of 165 gigawatt of RE capacity by 2025 in order to reach the APEC target of 23% in TPS. And this number includes the existing capacity that has already been installed from 2016 until this number includes the existing capacity that has already been installed in each AMS, which is around 49 gigawatt. And this makes an additional of 116 gigawatt of RE that still needs to be installed from 2016 until 2025 to catch up with the target. And the big five in ASEAN, which is Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam, hold the biggest share in total energy mix. So therefore, we can see in the graph that their contribution in the targeted RE capacity are the most significant amongst all. While Laos, PDR, and Myanmar also rise to hold big shares in RE capacity due to their huge potential in hydro. So there is one thing that we can also notice in the graph, that hydro still holds the biggest share of RE capacity in almost all AMS, which proves their abundance and dominating reserve in this region, which then followed by solar as well. As we can see in the graph, there is a significant drop of fossil fuel share in the added capacity and investment throughout the scenario from BAU to APS, which comes to the additional 116 gigawatt of RE capacity that needs to be installed from 2016 to 2025 in order to reach our APEC RE target. We also found that the amount of investment that needs to be made by ASEAN, which is around 189 billion US dollars in total, making it 18.9 billion USD annually for only the RE itself. And despite the downward trend of the solar and other renewable energy costs, at least until 2025, we also calculate the required investment for this additional RE, which is about 1.63 billion USD per gigawatt, while the investment for additional fossil fuel capacity is only around 0.87 billion US dollars per gigawatt. So this makes the investment required for the same amount of megawatt for RE is about 1.8 times higher than the investment for fossil fuel. And as a complementary of this outlook, especially in the focus of RE investment costs, we also bring to the table one of the findings from our previous study on the policy impact of RE investment, which is our levelized cost of electricity study. And one of our case study on solar PV shows that any policy measures that targeting on the reduction of capital and operating costs will result in a lower RE cost. In this case, we tested a few key parameters that we found quite impactful. And as we can see on the graph, so by applying exemption on duties and taxes, and we lowering interest rates, and then we can increasing the debt share and reducing the return on equity, we can obtain a lower cost of RE. So in conclusion, I would like to convey some key messages. The first, even in the case of AMS, national targets are fully achieved, there is still a gap in order to reach our APAC RE target. And for ASEAN to achieve its APAC target of 23% RE by 2025, it requires an allocation of around 18.9 billion USD annually for RE alone. And this investment in renewable capacity will need to be supported by providing RE financing framework in order to achieve the target of 23% RE share in 2025. And last but not least, stronger RE policies and well-targeted incentives from both government and private sector are the keys to support RE development in each IMS. So that is all from my side, and I would also like to remind you that this Outlook report is available on our website, so you can download it for free, just like any of our other publications. And thank you, Shani, for the opportunity. I'll give the floor back to you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Malati, for a very comprehensive explanation on the AO5 findings regarding the renewable energy. And next, I would like to invite Ms. Marisa to give some of the discussion points. So, Ms. Marisa, please, the time is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you the status of renewable energy development in the Philippines. This is my outline. So I will present to you the policy directions and mechanisms under the RE law, and the status of development, and what are the plans and programs that we have to promote more renewables in the country. So under the Republic Act 9513, which came into force in 2009, the government provides incentives to developers of renewables in the form of taxes and policy mechanisms. So as you can see in the slide, we have fiscal incentives for registered developers, both for commercial use and also own use. So for commercial purposes, we have the income tax holiday of 7 years and a lower income tax rate of 10%. Currently, the corporate income tax is 32%. And they can avail duty-free importation of equipment, and for local purchases, it is 0 VAT for local purchases of goods and services. And also the government share is greatly reduced for renewables, and actually for biomass it is exempt. It is also providing tax credit on domestic capital equipment, which can be availed, of course, after the income tax holiday. And for off-grid areas, as we know that in the Philippines we have a lot of islands, and more islands, a number of islands are still not connected to the grid. So we are providing cash incentives for missionary electrification utilizing renewables. And they are also exempt from universal charge. So these are the fiscal incentives. On non-fiscal, we have the policy mechanisms, and the one being in place now is the feed-in tariff system and the net metering. The RPS and green energy options are intended to be in place soon, and the guidelines are already subjected to public consultation, and we are in the process of finalizing the rules. Okay, so this is our roadmap that we launched in 2011 with our base figure of 2010. Our goal is to triple the capacity of renewables from 5,000 megawatts to 15,000 megawatts by 2030. And we have this sectoral targets for different resources, which we have already revised considering the latest development in different sectors. So slide. I cannot move. Okay. Okay. So as of as of July of this year, we have registered a total of 845 projects for renewables. As you can see in this table, the majority of our projects are coming from hydro, then followed by solar, wind, geothermal, and biomass. So these projects are in different stages. Most of them are in pre-development stage. That means they are under feasibility study. And if all of this will go on stream or will become economic, when all of these projects will proceed, the potential capacity is more than enough to meet our target. But currently, this is the total registered RE projects. The total capacity is about 5,000. But the additional capacity since the implementation of the law is almost 2,000 megawatts as of last year, from the period 2009 to 2016. So if we compare it to our roadmap, actually we are quite short of our target. The target is supposed to be more than 2,000 megawatts by this year. But there are a lot of challenges. Despite the incentives that we are providing, there are hurdles that our developers has to face, and I will discuss it later on. So as we see here in this figure, the geothermal, when it comes to, in terms of the share in the installed capacity, installed capacity in the Philippines as of 2016, renewables accounts for 32%. And out of this, we have hydro, 17%. So the majority of our renewables comes from hydro followed by geothermal. Um, so in terms of power generation, the share of renewables in the Philippines as of last year is 24%. Or the total power consumption that we have in the country is 90,797 gigawatts, and 24% of this comes from renewables. Now let's go to policy mechanisms that are in place in the country. We have net metering, and under the guidelines, it is limited to 100 kilowatt per meter. And this is a policy that empowers the consumers to produce its own generation, and anything that they cannot, or in excess of their consumption, they can share it to the grid, and they will be able to have a lower rate, lower amount of consumption. The excess will be offset to the next, in their next bill. So for net metering, as of August 2017, we have a total of 986 consumers connected to more than 10 distribution utilities with an aggregate capacity of about 6 megawatts. So this is being encouraged to become to minimize consumption from the grid. Another policy that is being in place is the feed-in tariff system, where we provide a fixed rate guaranteed for 20 years to the following sources: run-of-river, hydro, with an approved rate of 5 pesos and 9 centavos, and the installed capacity of, or installation target, is 250. For biomass, we have this we have this approved rate, and this is the installation target. And wind and solar has this corresponding targets and approved rates. As of now, the wind and solar feed-in tariff they had already met the target, and we have still balance for biomass and hydro. So under the FIT, we have this capacity covered by feed-in tariff of almost or more than 1 gigawatt. Now for RPS, this is intended to be in place after the FIT is after the feed-in tariff system is we are intending to graduate from feed-in tariff, and this is a policy where the electric cooperative or the distribution utilities are mandated to secure a portion of its supply from renewables. Under the draft guidelines, all the renewables that are commissioned after the passage of the law are eligible to comply, to be used in compliance of the RPS. Now, another policy is the green energy option that empowers the consumers to choose what type of sources are they going to utilize. So in here, the end user may choose renewables through distribution utilities or electric cooperatives, or it may be connected directly to the supplier if it is considered a contestable market. So as to the development, latest development in the uh, implementation of the projects, we have the executive order issued by the President, number 30, where the Energy Investment Coordinating Council was created to fast track the implementation of projects, of energy projects, those projects that are considered projects of national significance. So under this policy, the concerned um, government agencies are mandated to act on the application of permits, clearances within 30 days. Otherwise, that shall be considered deemed approved. So this is a policy that helps developers to secure auxiliary permits other than the service contracts from the Department of Energy. And also, we have also streamlined the permitting process. Other than streamlining the permitting process, the procedures or the processing period for acquiring service contracts in the Department of Energy is also streamlined, and we have shortened the period of processing the contract. So as to our plans and programs for the next 1 or 2 months from now, we are intending to finalize and issue the rules governing the renewable portfolio standards and the green energy auction. Also, we are intending to revise or update the National Renewable Energy Program and set a new target for renewables based on Ambition 2040. We will set a new target for our NREP. And in line with the directives of the President, we will continue to improve the process in securing permits relative to implementation of energy projects. And of course, the resource inventory and database enhancement will always be the continuous activity to minimize risk for developers. And we have, in our implementation of the project, there is always a need to ensure that safety, health, and environment aspects of the projects are always being observed. So we are intending to have a code of practice for each renewable technology. And as we are often the target of calamities, natural disasters, we have a policy on energy resiliency where we have this integration of systems and auditing of infrastructure to ensure that our power facilities are resilient and they can automatically or they can revert to operation immediately after disruptive events. And capacity building will always be the program of the department, especially for renewables. I think that ends my presentation, and thank you again for this opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Marisa, for sharing the really good progress on the RE development in Philippines. Now, I'd like to invite Ms. Supawan Salim to give the last discussion on the incentive in ASEAN. So the time is yours. Okay, Miss, can you unmute your microphones because we cannot hear you? Miss Supawan, can you unmute? Please unmute your microphone.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Channing. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah. One of the main challenge to increase to achieve higher RE targets is to design appropriate and effective renewable energy incentives and auction mechanism to increase the investment in renewable energy sector. Well, today I would briefly introduce our USAID Clean Power Asia program and our report on designing the RE incentives and auctions and the lesson learned for ASEAN. Then I will briefly talk about the status of renewable energy in ASEAN and existing policies and incentives. And then talking about the outlook for ASEAN and some transitioning towards RE auction in ASEAN countries. Well, USAID Clean Power Asia program is a 5-year program that aims to increase deployment in grid-connected renewable energy in Asia, focusing on lower macro countries in Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, and Vietnam. So we mainly provide assistance in 3 main areas. First, to provide assistance on setting the RE target and RE zoning. And secondly, to improve the policy enabling environment. And thirdly, to assist the private sector to mobilize investment in renewable energy sector. Well, a report on designing RE incentives and auctions lessons for ASEAN has been conducted and published on our website. In this report, we analyze the key design elements in each RE incentives and auctions and provide a lesson learned and policy recommendations for ASEAN. Some of the RE incentives include in this study, we have in tariffs, self-consumption schemes, auctions, tax incentives, soft loans, and also some other incentives such as a credit guarantee provided by the public sector. Well, let's have a look at the global renewable energy trend. You can see that in the past 5 years, orange and the blue one represent the RE installed capacity of wind and solar PV that experience the largest capacity growth among other RE sources. Well, in line with the global trend, we can see that the solar PV and wind also have seen some significant growth in the past 5 years, but still bioenergy and hydropower dominates the renewable energy capacity in ASEAN. Looking at the status of ASEAN RE installed capacity by countries, we can see that Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia have the large RE installed capacities compared to other ASEAN countries. And in the past 5 years, Philippines and Thailand has experienced large RE installed capacity growth. These two graphs show the statistics of renewable energy capacity that excluding the large hydro. So that's why it might be a little bit different from what Melody and Marisa sent. Okay, if you look at the existing RE incentives in ASEAN countries, we can see that for the countries with which experience high growth in RE sector like Thailand, Philippines, and Indonesia and Malaysia, they have feed-in tariffs in place together with the tax incentives and also the soft loan. So one of the main factors that lead to higher RE capacity is to have the combination of FIT and other incentives to stimulate the growth in the sector. And we also seen that a number of ASEAN countries started to implement the auction mechanism to procure the RE process. If we look at each RE incentives in more details, some of the lessons that learned from those implemented in ASEAN countries that when we consider the in tariff policy, we need to set the rates usually at the LCOE plus the investment return premium, and the FID normally should be differentiated by technology type and size and the location. For RE auctions, it should be noted that when setting the auction mechanism, we need to be clear about the policy goals of the auction, whether to the goal of the auction is to achieve the low price or for the price recovery. For some countries like Indonesia, they want to achieve low price, but they also require very high local content, and that is quite contradicting objectives. For auction in Thailand, last year Thailand have implemented the auction for biomass and biogas, while biomass have resulted in quite a successful auctions with a lot of competition in the sector, and it results in a very high discount to the ceiling price. But for the biogas in Thailand last year, they experienced very low competition. This is to do with the design of the auction as well that are very important to determine the success of the auctions in the country. Well, for the self-consumption schemes, we found that the lack of supporting documents, for example, guidelines and technical standards, could impose the barriers for deployment of self-consumption scheme like what is now in Indonesia. And most countries in ASEAN implement the income tax exemption as an incentive for renewable energy projects. And in Philippines, even have the comprehensive tax incentives specified in the RE Act. For another incentive in RE sector is soft loans that provided by the government. Soft loan would improve the financial institution knowledge on RE and also reduce the perceived risks on RE projects, like those implemented in Thailand through the revolving fund and those implemented in Malaysia through the Green Technology Financing Fund. So, in brief, country with a combination of incentives has seen the greatest growth in renewable power sector. And usually, FIT have been implemented with soft loans and other tax incentives. And we have also seen a transition from FITs towards auction mechanism for some certain technologies like solar auction and biomass and biogas auction in Thailand, which I will talk in more detail in the next two slides. And for the countries that achieve growth of self-consumption schemes, we found that comprehensive regulations, guidelines, and technical standards are required to ensure the success of self-consumption scheme implementation. Well, if you see the outlook of the ASEAN installed capacity, the yellow one represents the growth of the solar PV. That in terms of additional capacity, solar PV is the promising technology in the ASEAN countries that would play a role in the renewable energy growth in the next decade. Well, for the technology like solar PV and wind, which they experience a rapid reduction in the cost, as a transition towards the RE incentive from bid-in tariff to RE auctions in ASEAN countries, Especially last year, we have seen the implementation of auction in many ASEAN countries. For example, in Thailand last year announced the auction for biomass and biogas project in the three southern provinces. And earlier this year, Thailand announced another auction for SPP hybrid firm for all renewable energy types. And this is the first time for Thailand that announced the auction for a project with more than one renewable energy sources, and also require the project to supply the electricity under the firm power contract, meaning that to be able to supply electricity 100% during peak time and 65% during off-peak time. And the announcements of VSPP semi-firm auction for biomass, biogas, and energy crop is coming coming early next year. Well, in Malaysia, we have seen the auction for solar farm last year, and actually, Malaysia used to implement the feed-in tariffs for solar PV before, but they need to like apply the degradation rates many times due to the decreasing cost of solar PV technology. So in the future, Malaysia announced to procure the utility scale solar by auction mechanism. In Indonesia, started the solar auction farm in 2013, but at that time it's not quite successful because of the design of the auction itself, and also because of the unclear policy. Um, at that time, one of the comments from the project developer is that they allow the time for bidding requirements, not enough for the bidder to prepare the document. So it results in a very low competition. And last year, Indonesia have the geothermal auction, and this year they just announced the tender for solar farm of 158 megawatt. So in other lower Mekong countries like Cambodia, Vietnam, and Laos, we saw the trends that they are pursuing the solar pilot auctions. So transitioning towards the IE auctions for solar technology in ASEAN countries is promising. Well, one of the key message of IE incentives in ASEAN that I would like to make is two messages. First is combination of feed-in tariffs and other IE incentives are required for development of renewable energy technology in ASEAN countries. At the same time, we saw the auction mechanism have gaining the momentum in ASEAN countries for some certain type of technology like solar PV and wind. Well, thank you very much, and I will bring the floor to Chani.
Thank you, Miss Supawan Salim, for sharing your thoughts and the findings of the USAID report on the incentives. Now, I'd like to guide you all to the question and answer session. We actually received a question for Miss Marisa. And the question is, the audience asks if there is a means for renewable energy credits or RECs, generation verification and retirement in the Philippines. And if there is any, are this system endorsed or supported by the government? So that is the question, Ms. Marisa. Can you help us to answer that?
Okay. Thank you very much for that question. I understand that renewable energy credits is similar to renewable energy certificates we have in the country. We call it renewable energy certificates, which is provided under the law, under the renewable portfolio standards. Yes, there will be a mechanism for verification of RE certificates, and this will be considered a means of compliance for the RPS. There is a separate rules which is actually being subjected now for public consultation, the RE market rules. And this will be the rules that will govern this RE credit or certificate generation verification in the Philippines.
Okay. Thank you for answering the question. I hope it answers the audience curiosity. And also we receive other questions directed to Ms. Supawan Salim. So you've been talking about the RE incentives like the FIT and other mechanism like auction. So the question is, when should the country move from the FIT mechanism to auction mechanism? And can you elaborate like the pros and cons of having two different mechanism in the RE development?
Hi.
Yes.
Well, thank you for the question. The main difference between the FIT mechanism and the auction is that for FI feed-in tariffs, usually they provide the government will provide the incentives like the premium to the wholesale cost of electricity. So for FIT scheme, it will incur the cost for the government larger than the auction scheme, where for the auction, the auction mechanism would reveal the price discovery, like the price of the project would be determined by the results of the auction. So for feed-in tariffs, it would be useful to use for like very early stage of technology, like maybe geothermal and biogas. Like in Thailand, feed-in tariffs might be more suitable to provide the premiums for the project developers. But for the technology like solar and wind, maybe auction mechanism is more suitable due to like the rapid changes in the cost of that technology.
Okay, so we understand that the auction and the FIT has its own benefit and its own advantages. And I'm curious, how about the like the country that is still in early stage of developing renewable energy? What kind of the incentive that they should set up first in making the RE develop in their country? Do you have opinion on this?
Yeah, feed-in tariffs to be the main incentive to provide for project developer, because feed-in tariff like guarantee price like for a long period of time for the project developer. But after the market has been developed at some stage, then auction mechanism should be introduced to the country to procure the like the new type of like the new technology in order to bring the cost down.
Okay, so in applying the feed-in tariff itself, should the country reevaluate the feed-in tariff itself per annual basis or in some time of period to revise that in order to evaluate the development, or how we should progress with the feed-in tariff before they move to the auction scheme? Maybe Ms. Marisa also can share uh, the the experience of the Philippines on setting the feed-in tariffs.
In the Philippines, we the rates are being defined by the Energy Regulatory Commission, and there is a process of course, the National Renewable Energy Board is the one filing the petition, and it will be subjected to a public consultation, and it will be evaluated whether the proposed rate is reasonable based on project cost and so on. So once the ERC fix the rate, that will be valid or guaranteed for 20 years in the Philippines. But we set an installation target, meaning it is equivalent to a cap. Now, for each technology, we set an installation target because we want to calibrate the cost implication, because in the Philippines, all the cost will be passed on to the consumers. So as you have seen in my slides, there is a corresponding installation target for each technology. So that's what we do.
Okay. Thank you for sharing the answer, Ms. Marisa. And maybe I'd like to offer the speakers, if they have the questions to each other.
Yes, Ms. Shani, I would like to use the opportunity to ask to Ms. Supawan, actually. While developing the study, or maybe from other countries outside ASEAN, maybe, is there any challenge or any obstacles for countries that are shifting from FIT to auctions? Maybe there are, because the scheme is quite different, so maybe they have come to some challenges that for our lesson learned.
Thank you, Melody. Well, for moving towards FIT to auctions, well, in some countries, the market might not be, how to say, it might not be very ready in terms of there's no project developers. There's not a lot of project developers yet in the country, and the country's condition in terms of like the grid connection, in terms of the investment, and other incentives might not be in place enough to like attract enough competition for the auctions. So that might be the challenge to for the countries to also like design auctions in a way that it would act maybe not only the local bidders and also the international bidders to set the RE projects in the countries. And actually, one of the main advantage of auction via the bid-in tariff is that it's the project developers that usually have more like knowledge on the cost of the RE technology. So auctions would be useful in terms of the price discovery of having that technology in country. But yeah, setting the country's readiness in terms of like the regulations, the grid connections, and supporting environment for investment would be important for like having the successful competition.
Okay. Is the answer satisfy your curiosity, Ms. Malati?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for answering, Ms. Supawan.
Okay. Is one of the speakers want to make a further comment on our discussions, or maybe some other thoughts that want to be conveyed before we are rounding up the question and answer session? Okay, I think if there's no other discussion left, then I will round up this discussion by concluding some of the points that we've discussed today from the presentation and from the discussion as well. we learned that first from the IO5 findings, the ASEAN needs to work more, especially make a significant investment which to boost further the renewable energy to reach the target of 23% share in 2025. And in order to do that, we've learned from the Philippines and also from the other findings from the USAID that incentive is one of the effort or the main support to continue the growth further, and the policy that is needed also not always related to the incentive, not only the FIT, but also like we learned from the Philippines that the other policies should be in place as well, like for the permitting and also the enhancement of the database of the renewable, so the renewable energy will continue to grow in this region. And the FIT and the auction are the platform or the incentive that the country may consider to further bringing the development in place for renewable energy in their country. So I think this is the conclusion for our today's webinar. So, and thank you for joining us in this webinar. We have the upcoming webinar next week on nuclear energy on 13th of December at the same time. So you feel free to join us also next week. Thank you for your attention and time.